Buen Camino, pilgrims, and welcome back to the Sacred Steps podcast. I'm Kevin Donahue. On today's show, we're walking virtually alongside Senior Chief Petty Officer retired Brad Genereux. After 22 years in the U.S. Navy and 11 overseas deployments, Brad found his return to society lacking purpose. He set out on the Camino de Santiago and walked 500 miles, finding a new purpose, helping veterans adapt and overcome PTSD by walking the Camino Frances. He'll share his story and discuss veterans on the Camino on today's episode of the Sacred Steps podcast.
Walking virtually along the world's most revered footpaths and connecting the global community of pilgrims. It's the Sacred Steps podcast, available on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. Broadcasting from the Shaymare Studios in Florida, here's your host, pilgrim, backpacker, and author, Kevin Donahue.
Brad Genereux, welcome to the Sacred Steps podcast.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You served overseas, active duty. You were in the Navy for a couple decades and served in Afghanistan. For our entire generation, I think that's something that holds so many questions. And I was wondering if you'd share a little bit about your service.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I did serve 22 and a half years in the United States Navy. I retired as a Senior Chief Petty Officer. And I actually deployed 11 times throughout my career. The last time I deployed was to Afghanistan, and it was, I guess it kind of finished my naval career. You know, they say when you're no longer having fun, it's time to retire. So that's exactly what I did.
And you came back and found, I think, life was a little different outside of the service. And I want to just introduce a quote from your book. Brad Genereux's book, A Soldier to Santiago, Finding Peace on the Warrior Path. And Brad, if I can ask you to comment on this quote, you write, "I gave the best years of my life to a cause, to a belief that proved false. I loved living on the edge, the thrill of standing the watch, rushing into harm's way on behalf of my country. For over 22 years and with pride, I represented America by wearing the cloth of the nation. When my service was all over, life had passed me by, and I fit in nowhere."
Yeah, and that's precisely how I felt, and that's how I think a lot of service members find themselves at the end of their career. It seems like the more time they spend in, the more it affects them or can affect them. So, you know, like Murphy's Law says, no plan survives first contact. And my retirement didn't survive. You know, my retirement plan did not survive the first contact either. So I found myself pretty much lost, aimless. And at some point, I just grabbed a backpack, got a one-way flight to Europe, and started walking the Camino.
Were you familiar with the Camino de Santiago at any point? What was the inspiration for the Camino specifically?
Yeah, I had heard of it. I actually came across it in a photography magazine when I was living in Dubai for a while. And I saw this thing, these amazing photos, and I knew immediately that I had to go there. So I had heard of it. I started researching it, you know, and I was pretty excited about it. I had, you know, full plans to go straight from Dubai to walk the Camino, but my mom died, so, you know, that went to the back burner. And yeah. But I never let go of the thought that I was going to do it, and I did.
Our guest today is Brad Genereux. After his service in the U.S. Navy, he walked the Camino and then wrote a book called Soldier to Santiago, Finding Peace on the Warrior Path. We'll link it in the show notes below. So to find his book and to find his website, please see our show notes. Brad, after you walk the Camino, and my takeaway from the book is that this was a life-changing, life-altering type experience, and you found that there was a place in the Camino for soldiers like you.
I actually, as soon as I started walking the Camino, I recognized that there was something extraordinary about this. It wasn't just a hiking trip. There's an intangible. I think a lot of people have written about the Camino trying to put their finger on what makes it so extraordinary. But it's something you really have to experience. I knew right away that I wanted to share my story and use the Camino as a backdrop. And so I had those thoughts filling my head, day after day as I walked the Camino. And it was a life-changing experience. It was incredible. It's hard to really describe.
You came home from the Camino, and in talking to some of your brothers, recognized that there were warriors who had returned that were struggling to deal with life at home. Some of them suffering from PTSD. Some of them missing the brotherhood. Some of them struggling to, I think, kind of find their place in society versus the military service. You set up an organization and you began taking veterans to walk the Camino de Santiago to find a better peace for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I initially I felt that sharing the story, using the book as my medium was enough, and I did. I wrote the book and got it published, and but then it didn't quite seem like enough. So I know I'm not the only veteran who has struggled. Obviously, it's a huge problem. And so I decided to create Veterans on the Camino, and basically what I do is remove obstacles and enable them to, take this walk on the Camino and hopefully find the peace and maybe make that difference in their life. It's going to encourage them to heal and move forward with life and put some things at peace.
Veterans on the Camino is a 501c3 charity in the United States, and we're going to link their website below because I think there's some people who are hearing your purpose who know what the Camino can do and the call and impact that it has on lives, and would love to help support veterans walking on the Camino de Santiago. Now, just a few logistics here. You have applicants. And if someone is listening to the podcast and thinking this might be something that they're interested in, they can go on the website and apply. And then once your groups are together, you walk the Camino Francais from Saint-Jean-de-Pied-de-Port to Santiago de Compostela. Is that the route that you walk?
Yes, it is, except we go all the way to Finisterre. I think that's important. And watching the sunset at the end of the trail, and the realization hits that you're only at the very beginning. And to do that as a group and to witness the changes that happen with the participants over that, 35-ish days is extraordinary. It's incredible.
The sense of brotherhood that comes from those who shared service and have worn the uniform is unmistakable. I have to think that this group of brothers, of veterans who are walking the Camino, are bonded together even more so from their Camino pilgrimage.
Yes, it's not in every single case, but in most cases, they form lifelong relationships with one another, and I have to add also, it's not just American veterans, any coalition veteran, and we always have veterans from many different countries. So it's a great opportunity to come to that realization that a soldier is a soldier is a soldier. We all had very similar struggles. It's not just an American thing, and it's an enriching experience because oftentimes in the service you'll serve side by side with soldiers from other countries. This is a chance to take a journey of a different type with them and realize that there's a lot more in common than there is different.
Retired U.S. Navy Senior Chief Petty Officer Brad Genereux is our guest today on the Sacred Steps podcast. Brad, this is not an organized tour where everyone's kind of, required to do this and required to do that. You kind of bring the veterans to the Camino and empower them to have their own experience on the Camino Frances. Is it as impactful for everyone?
It's really hard to tell, and when I look at it like that, it's how do we determine success with our organization? Well, there's really no way to know. The end goal is to have an impact on that suicide rate of veterans, and we'll never know if we've made that difference in somebody's life or not. As far as the changes that I've seen and some of the incredible stories and the camaraderie, there's so many things. And I really, I'm not there as the leader of the group. I try to record it because a lot of people support us to help make this happen. And I like to be able to share what I can with them, with the readers, through blogs and photos and things. But I don't really know how to describe some of the things that I've seen happen, some of the changes that I've seen, some of the outpourings, and some of these guys when they break down. It's and you're there to help each other out. As far as the Camino, like I said, it's not a guided tour. I think you captured that pretty well. I only have a couple rules for the group that goes. They have to carry everything they bring, and they have to walk everywhere they go. So, real basic principles, and I think it's an important part of it. Other than that, it's their Camino, and that's the other thing that I expressed to them right from the beginning. If they want to walk alone, they can. If they want to be, make it more of a group thing, they just need to let it evolve as it feels right. And that's it. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy every single step.
I read on your blog a wonderful retelling of a warrior for whom your organization walked in memoriam. And this year, in 2021, COVID willing, Veterans on the Camino will welcome its first ever family member walking the Camino alongside these warriors in memoriam of a fallen service member.
Yeah, we're really excited about this new piece of the program. And it just occurred to us because a couple years ago, we always dedicate our annual pilgrimage to a fallen soldier. And we had selected a kid named Casey, and he was from Louisiana. He was a Marine, and upon returning, we became pretty close with the family. We always give them the Compostela that we dedicate to the fallen soldier. And in the course of that, it occurred at some point recently, that just why not invite the father who expressed a real interest in walking the Camino to have a pretty rare glimpse of what it's like to be surrounded in the company of these veterans and to walk the walk with them and hear the stories and be a part of everything. It'd give him, I think, a pretty unusual insight into what his son had experienced, in his time as a Marine. So there's that, and then there's the group of veterans getting to see it from the other side as well. What's it like to be a family member? What did he feel? What were his thoughts? And I think it's going to be an enriching experience for everybody, and we're really excited to hopefully go 2021 and have some pretty cool stories to report from that.
Brad, walking the Camino, unfortunately, and you've done it, and I've been there. It's not free. It costs money to make the trip. and to while the churches and the albergues are often donativo, it does cost money. How can our audience help support veterans on the Camino?
Well, money is a big help. So what we do when we select a veteran to be part of our program, we first of all buy their boots and a backpack. That's the most critical items. We want to make sure there's no shortcuts on that. Everything else can be really simple. What you carry on your back is a reflection of your own insecurities. That's what they say. So we do want to make sure they have quality footwear and backpacks. So we buy those for them. We pay for all of their travel, and we give them a daily per diem for albergues and food and whatnot. It's not much, but it's enough to get by. With that said, the average cost for an American soldier to go into the Camino under our program is about $3,000. It depends on airfare and other things, of course. But so every time we take a veteran, it's got a price tag to it, and the best way to help support that is to help us be able to afford to pay for another veteran and get some more involved.
Yeah, if you're listening and you have it in your heart to help support Veterans on the Camino, which is a 501c3 charity, we'll link the donation website in the show notes. You can click there and reach out to the organization directly, whether that be a small financial contribution, whether you'd like to help sponsor an entire trip for a veteran to walk the Camino de Santiago. Please see our show notes below for veteransonthecamino.com. Brad, I want to ask you, your book, A Soldier to Santiago, Finding Peace on the Warrior Path, is not just about coming home from the United States Navy after 22 years, but in the course of walking the Camino de Santiago, you found space, I think, to reflect a bit on your naval career and on the Camino experience itself. Would you mind sharing with the audience maybe a bit from the book on your Camino experience personally?
Sure. The book is actually a very personal thing, and I felt like I needed to share that in the hopes that other people struggling could kind of appreciate that and know that there's some options out there. The Camino is a great one. It's not for everybody, but if it calls, then you should definitely go check it out. For me, walking the Camino provided the time and the space that I desperately needed to kind of reboot and to find that inner peace. I was so compartmentalized coming out of the Navy, and it doesn't have to be a military experience. Anybody can experience that. But I really needed that time and the space and the simplicity of life to where all you do is walk, eat, sleep. To unplug from the phone, the computer, phone calls, anything. If you have a conversation, it's a real face-to-face thing, and I needed that. I needed that to redefine who I was and what I needed out of life.
And the result is not only the book, but also helping to work with veterans on the Camino and give back to your brotherhood. So I have to thank you not only for your military service in honor of our nation, but also for what you're doing to help those who are struggling to find their path afterwards, because the reality of veteran suicide is one of our generation's trying moments. And I think there are so many who every day are so close to hanging on and trying to find a little inner peace. And what Veterans on the Camino does, obviously, is one avenue for that. There are a lot of organizations that reach out to veterans. Obviously, walking the Camino is a single experience. What other resources do you recommend for veterans who need to find the camaraderie once they come home?
Yeah, the camaraderie that's a common link with anybody who served in uniform. They're always looking for that, and nothing can really compare with that. But there's some great organizations that come close. Personally, I've been involved with Team Rubicon, and that's been a really good experience. It's an opportunity to go, help out people who have been struck by natural disaster, and work side by side with people. It's a feel good situation. There are many organizations out there. It's a matter of finding one that's going to kind of sync up with your lifestyle and what you're looking for to help you get that relief on what you're missing. So,
Yeah. Looking ahead, I always like to ask, and I know that this is a difficult year to make plans because we don't know what lies ahead. But looking ahead to 2021, what are your next steps, Brad? Are you going to be walking the Camino with the veterans this year? Will you be documenting their progress?
I certainly hope so. I really missed it for 2020. So I'm really excited that something's going to give and we'll be permitted to travel. And yeah, it'll be great to get back out there, not only for the group that's been waiting so patiently to go. And by the way, some of them could have gone, ones that live in Europe, but they all across the board opted to wait until we could go as a group. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm really hoping that the Camino will be back out there making tracks again this year at some point. But it's also to help support the albergues and all the many different stores and shops and everything that's on the Camino that is there to help the peregrinos make their way. I know they're looking forward to having pilgrims walking the way once again as well.
Absolutely. For those who might be interested in walking with veterans on the Camino in the future, your 2021 groups are already formed. Are you taking applications for 2022 or future groups?
Yeah, not as of this point, until we know for sure that we can move ahead. But once we do make that determination, the board of directors here, then we will be announcing on the website when the application season will begin again. And we're also looking at expanding the program and potentially sending some solo veterans on the Camino. Some people that may suit better, and we want to make that an option as well. So keep an eye on the website for upcoming possibilities.
Brad Genereux, thank you so much for taking time and to share your story on the Sacred Steps podcast today. I am so grateful to speak with you.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and also to talk with a very well-traveled pilgrim.
Thank you so much. Be well and buen camino, Brad.
Buen camino.
This has been the Sacred Steps Podcast. Visit sacredstepspodcast.com for episode notes, links, or to contact Kevin. Watch us online on YouTube. We read every comment. Please add your review and feedback. Before you go, tap subscribe to have episodes added to your playlist. Until next time, buen camino.